Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 and 3. Common interpretation by James W. Caesar and Jamin Ruskin. Most democratic nations on earth elect the president by direct popular vote, but that was never the American system, and it still is not. We use the so-called Electoral College system to choose our president, which today means that 538 electors drawn from the states and the District of Columbia speak for the rest of us. This is a complex and non-uniform state-based process designed like the U.S. Senate, which was originally composed of members chosen by state legislatures, not the people, to filter public opinion through a deliberating intermediate institution. But the Electoral College has produced recurring political controversy over the centuries and also experienced significant constitutional, legislative, and political upheaval and revision. Today, few people would consider the Electoral College to be a deliberative body as it was once imagined, because electors are appointed mechanistically to winners according to vote totals in the states. All of the electors meet in their state capitals and the December date set by Congress to cast their ballots. In practice, they simply follow the election returns and never conduct substantive discussion or debate about who should be president. Still, the electors do possess the legal prerogative to vote as they wish, and under extraordinary circumstances, they might exercise that prerogative to change the expected outcome dictated by popular election returns. The colloquially named Electoral College arises from Article 2, Section 1, Clauses 2 and 3, which states that each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress, but so no senator, nor all representative, or person holding office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed elector. The Congress may determine the time for choosing the electors and the day on which they shall give their votes, which day shall be the same throughout the United States. Under the first original provisions of Article 2, electors cast ballots not for one candidate for president but for two, with the second place finisher becoming vice president. No one originally expected that there would be national parties that nominated candidates and slated a ticket for president and vice president. A strange two-vote feature, nevertheless, led almost immediately to a serious political crisis in the election of 1800, when Democratic Republican Thomas Jefferson defeated Federalist John Adams 73 to 65 in the Electoral College, but then tied his own nominal running mate, R.M. Burr, 73 to 73. The mischievous Burr refused to stand down in the face of this embarrassing constitutional glitch, thus throwing the process into the United House of Representatives under the so-called contingent election procedures, in which each state's U.S. House of Representatives delegation casts a single vote for president, and the winner of the majority becomes president. The resulting contingent election in the House became a nightmare of its own when the lame duck Federalist-controlled Congress took exhausting 6-day and 66 ballots to choose Jefferson, who the Federalists ultimately considered the lesser of two evils. The most glaring early bugs in the system, the real possibility for ties, the fact that the president and the vice president could represent different political parties, as had happened when Adams and Jefferson served together in 1796, were ironed out by the 12th Amendment in 1804. But our unique electoral college system has continued to shape the country's politics in fundamental ways that both supporters and critics would agree depart from democratic norms. Under Article 2, the states are allotted a number of electors equal to their congressional delegation, which is the number of representatives, plus 2 for the senators, but the actual electors are appointed according to rules set exclusively by the state legislatures themselves. Today, 48 states appoint all of their electors on a winner-take-all basis from slates provided by the top vote getter in their statewide popular election for president. But 2 states, Maine and Nebraska, awarded electors by congressional district and give their remaining 2 electoral votes to the statewide winner. Historically, there has been an even more dazzling variety in the system developed in each state. In the first presidential election, 5 state legislatures in Connecticut, Delaware, Georgia, New Jersey, and South Carolina themselves simply designated presidential electors without having any popular election at all. In 4 states, the voters elected all of the electors. In Virginia, and the 10 congressional districts, the General Assembly decided the Commonwealth into 12 presidential districts and conducted a popular election. In subsequent elections, there have been statewide elections of electors from single-member districts that mirror congressional district, elections of electors from the specially designed multi-member districts, elections in which only the electors' names appear on the ballot but not the names of the presidential candidates, elections in which the presidential candidate's name appear on the ballot but not the names of electors, and even elections where the state legislatures have chosen not to appoint any electors. All of these variations are allowable under the constitutional design, and the Supreme Court wrote in Macpherson versus Blanker, 1892, which rejects a constitutional challenge to a Michigan law providing for selection of electors by a district system. The appointment and the mode appointment of electors belong exclusively to the states under the Constitution of the United States. We have no uniform national system for appointing electors, which means the legislatures do not have to consult the public at all. When members of Florida legislature in 2000 threatened to abandon the results of the statewide popular contest and appoint electors from the particular candidate, the Supreme Court in Bush versus Gore 2000 appeared to endorse the power to do so by denying that citizens have a constitutional right to vote in presidential elections. As the majority put it, the individual citizen has no federal constitutional right to vote for electors for the President of the United States. When it comes to presidential elections, voters are at the mercy of the state legislatures. Although this lack of procedural uniformity has now proven especially controversial, this fact has the Electoral College has periodically produced winners who clearly lost the national popular vote to an opponent. In at least 5 presidential elections, 1824, 1876, 1888, 2000, and 2016, the presidential candidate who prevailed in the popular vote lost in the Electoral College. For example, in the dispute election of 2000, Vice President Al Gore received over 500,000 more votes than Governor George W. Bush did nationally, but lost to Bush in the Electoral College by the vote of 266 to 271. After the Supreme Court intervened on equal protection claims to halt a Florida Supreme Court order to recount ballots in some counties, many people believe that the ability to carry the whole election by capturing this or that state in our time, that has been Florida and Ohio, increases the likelihood for strategic mischief and corruption in the electoral process. Supporters of the Electoral College credited it with preserving an important dimension for state-based federalism in our presidential elections and argue that it works to guarantee that our presidents will have nationwide support. Critics argue, under current circumstances, that it actually consigns most states in the Union to spectator standards in presidential elections and drags down vote turnout in these states, reduces the real field of play to fewer than a dozen swing states, and dramatically polarizes the nation's politics while reducing voter turnout. Proposed constitutional amendments for different plans for the direct popular election, some with a runoff provision in the event no candidate receives 40% in the first round, have to date made little headway. A recent and unusual plan to work around the amendment process and address the problems of the Electoral College is the National Popular Vote Plan, which began in Maryland in 2007 and has since won support from a dozen other states. The idea is to form an interstate agreement for states to appoint their electors for the winner of the national popular vote rather than the winner in each state. Champions this plan asserts that it would guarantee that there would be no more wrong winners and that every part of the Union would attract political investment and campaigning by the parties, which they quickly abandon large parts of the country to their opponents while taking many other states for granted. Opponents say that the National Popular Vote Plan actually defeats the state-based design for the Electoral College, could never be enforced if the state reneged its promise and is unconstitutional given the continuing polarization of American politics and background unhappiness with the Electoral College. It seems certain that the National Popular Vote Plan and other reform proposals will continue to attract public attention and debate. Manders debate. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, and the campaign for a national popular vote by Jamin Ruskin. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the United States Constitution opens by saying each state shall appoint in such manner, and the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors. This open-ended delegation power to the states over the award of their electoral votes creates a power in state legislatures that is exclusive and plenary, and the legislature have exercised their power in a multiplicity of surprising ways to participate in presidential elections. Today there is a movement on the way for the National Popular Vote (NPV) in the state compact, which hinges on creating a collaborative deployment of this robust state legislative power. The members of this compact coalition, Maryland, which launched the effort, along with California, Hawaii, Illinois, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, Vermont, Washington, and the District of Columbia, have all agreed to cast the state's electoral college votes for the winner of the national popular vote, rather than the winner in their states. The compact is activated when states representing 270 electoral college votes agree to join. There are currently 165 electoral votes representing the compact, more than half needed. By tying the award electors to the result in the national popular election, the MPV would replace the current state-by-state competition with the effective national popular election, thereby 1. Guaranteeing that the Electoral College winner is a popular vote winner. 2. Establishing presidential elections in which every vote counts and every vote counts equally. 3. Incentivizing presidential candidates to campaign all over America, even in safe blue states like California, New York, and Hawaii, and the safe red states like Texas, Missouri, and Alaska, instead of just in the dozen or so swing states like Florida or New Hampshire. 4. Dramatically increasing campaign activity in today's 38 spectator states and driving up turnout everywhere. And 5. Reducing the incentives for electoral corruption and strategic mischief in the handful of swing states, the kind of moral hazard that made the 2000 presidential election in Florida such a political debacle, an international scandal. Some critics of the National Popular Vote Plan defend the way the Electoral College system is working today, with the 48 states choosing to give all the electors in presidential elections to the statewide first-place finisher in winner-take-all fashion, and 2 states, Maine and Nebraska, divvying up the electors by congressional districts, with the 2 bonus electors going to the winner in the statewide vote. Defenders are now troubled by the fact that 2 of our last 5 presidents, George W. Bush and Donald Trump, lost the national popular vote, with President Trump losing decisively to Hillary Clinton by more than 2.8 million votes. And some argue, somewhat dubiously, that the candidates are forced to campaign all over the country under the current regime, a point that may be the opposite of the truth. Other critics of the National Popular Vote Plan make a constitutional argument asserting that they do not have the power to enter such a compact because they are bound to cast electors only in accordance with the whole plurality of the voters the states prefer. This constitutional argument defies the plain language of Article 2, Section 1, and the actual history of its operation. The pervasive state-by-state winner-take-all method of awarding electoral votes is nowhere to be found in the Constitution, was never debated at the Constitutional Convention, as far as we can tell. It is not mentioned in the Federalist Papers. Furthermore, it was used by only 3 of our first 13 states when our first presidential election took place in 1789, and all of them dropped it by 1800. In reality, the states have adopted a vast array of different approaches for awarding electors, including naming them in state law, appointing them in single-member congressional district, assigning them by multi-member congressional district, giving the governor the power to appoint them, giving the governor and his cabinet the power to appoint them, giving the governor and the lower house of the state legislature the power to appoint them, giving both houses of the legislature the power to appoint electors in a concurrent resolution, or delegating the power to elect them to both houses of the legislature acting together in a joint convention. In some states, the voters vote for electors directly, and in the others, In others, vote for the presidential candidates. The U.S. Supreme Court has repeatedly characterized the authority of the states over the manner of voting the electors exclusive and plenary. The leading decision in McPherson versus Blanker, 1892, in which the court rejected a constitutional attack on Michigan's plan for choosing electors and held the Constitution does not provide that the appointment of the elector shall be by popular vote, nor that the elector shall be voted for upon a general ticket, the one-take-all rule, nor that the majority of those who exercise elective franchise can alone choose electors. It recognizes that the people and through the representatives in the legislature and leaves to the legislature exclusively to define the method of effecting the object. In short, the appointment and mode of appointment of electors belong exclusively to the states under the Constitution of the United States. The National Popular Vote Plan National Popular Vote Plan unifies the state's clear powers under Article 2, Section 1, with the power to form interstate compacts with congressional consent under Article 1, Section 10. Given that the popular vote loser has prevailed in the Electoral College 5 times in our history, in 1824, 1876, 1888, 2000, and 2016. Given that the number of actively contested states in the general election has fallen to a tiny number in our polarized red state, blue state nation, the national popular vote has both a sound constitutional basis and compelling democratic logic. The next perspective, Article 2, Section 1, by James W. Caesar. The creation of the office of the presidency and the Constitutional Convention in 1787 was one of the greatest changes from the prevailing government under the Articles of Confederation. The Articles has no president nor Supreme Court, only a Congress. The clauses of the Constitution under consideration for this essay outline 4 measures that were designed to promote an independent and responsible executive, the presidential selection system, presidential eligibility, composition, and the oath of office. The presidential selection system, the Electoral College. The Electoral College, established in Article 2, Section 1, remains in effect although it operates in a substantially different manner from what was originally envisaged. Much can nevertheless be learned from examining the founders' intentions, as there can be no doubt just how important the selection of the president was to the design of the new government. It is seldom observed that the Electoral College is the 4th national institution created by the Constitution, going along with Congress, the presidency, and the court. Its aim was to govern the entirety of the process of selecting the president and the vice president, from the initial function of identifying and winnowing the candidates to the final stage of electing these officers, except when, for lack of a majority, the decision of choosing the president is given to the House of Representatives and the vice president to the Senate. The initial function of winnowing the candidates effectively is give constitutional governance with the formation of political parties in the early 19th century. This task, known now as nomination, is performed by the parties and by state laws and primaries. The founders had 4 main objectives for the Electoral College. First, the Electoral College was created to provide the presidency with its own base of support. The plan was alternative to another method proposed at the convention, the selection of the president by Congress, which would have risks making the executive subservient to the legislature. Second, the founders sought to supply a basis of popular legitimacy for the president, the Electoral College, under which the electors would be chosen either by the people or the state legislatures, was under the circumstances of the day a quite popular process. The system, it was sought, would ordinarily hear the public voice. Third, even with this popular input, the electors were still representative, having the discretion to choose among the most fit candidates. The founders were especially concerned about the dangers involved in the selection of the president, and they counted on the electors to block the election of a demagogue. No threat was graver than this to the survival of the constitutional system. Finally, the Electoral College system was meant to channel the energies of the major political figures when the thoughts of achieving the highest office. If the choice of the president was restricted to those who had a proven record of service, a signal would be sent to all the hopefuls to pursue a serious political career and avoid engaging in what Alexander Hamilton dismissively referred to as the little arts of popularity. Prudential eligibility, the eligibility clause. The eligibility clause establishing the criteria for eligibility for the presidency reflected two concerns. The first is to avoid the possibility of a divided loyalty on the part of the president. And the president is the most important single official of the government, and the one with a major responsibility for conducting affairs with the foreign nations, a perfect fidelity to the nation and to no other country becomes an essential objective. Even the public suspicion of divided loyalty can sap confidence in the presidency. The founders accordingly required that in the future the president must be a natural-born citizen, that is, not immigrant and a resident in the United States for 14 years before being elected, and that is someone who has not moved to live abroad. Many have questioned this one difference that is created between the standards of born and naturalized citizens. It is a measure of the founders' concern for removing doubts about the president's full attachment to the nation. The second criterion of eligibility is the age requirement of 35 years, 5 years greater than that of a senator and 10 years for a member of the House. The higher age for the presidency was meant to increase the likelihood that the president would have acquired experience relevant to governing, and returning to the question of prudential selection, that the public and electors would have record for judging the candidates. In fact, the minimum age seemed to have undershot considerably what the American public has preferred. The youngest person to become president was Theodore Roosevelt, who ascended at the age of 42 to the presidency from the vice presidency following the death of William McKinley. John Kennedy was the youngest elected to be president and 43. These two requirements for eligibility, and the only ones in the original Constitution, and naturally lead one to think of the many possibilities that do not apply. Ethnicity, race, gender, religious affiliation, explicitly excluding Article 6, Clause 3, and property qualifications. This clause is also the one that resolved silently the question of the number of terms the president can serve. The founders placed no limits on the length of service. This was changed by the 22nd Amendment, ratified in 1951. which bars eligibility to a person elected to 2 terms, or 1 term as service as a president for more than 2 years for the term of another person. Prudential compensation, the compensation clause. The compensation clause, likewise, has 2 objectives. First, while the Constitution does not set a salary, it does say that the president shall be paid, obviating a proposal and the convention that the president might serve without compensation, which would have restricted the presidency to persons of wealth or favorites of the wealthy. Second, once Congress sets the compensation, it can neither be increased nor reduced during the time the president serves, designed to protect the separation of powers and the president's independence. So this provision, in the colorful language of Alexander Hamilton in the Federalist number 73, would prevent the legislature from attempt to neither reduce the president by famine or tempt him by largesses. Section 1 of the Article 2 concludes with the oath of office. Oaths are mentioned for other officers elsewhere in the Constitution, see Article 6, but only in the case of the presidency is the text of the oath spelled out. This fact, together with the president's pledge to the best of my ability to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, suggests a special connection between the president and the Constitution. So the oath was understood by the President Lincoln in one of the most widely discussed texts ever written on the nature of presidential powers. Lincoln, in a letter to Albert Hodges, offered a commentary on the oath, which he understood to be both a limitation of the president's authority and a kind of extraordinary grant for discretion. On the first count, Lincoln explained that notwithstanding his personal will for slavery, he felt bound by the oath to restrict his actions on this great matter only to what was permitted under the Constitution. Understood, he wrote, that in ordinary civil administration, this oath even forbade me to practically indulge my primary object judgment on the moral question of slavery. I had publicly declared this many times in many ways, and I aver that to this day I have done no official act in mere reference to my object judgment and feeling on slavery. Yet it then immediately went on, in the letter's most famous passage, to state how the oath guided him towards the broadest exercise of presidential discretion. I did understand, however, that my oath to preserve the Constitution to the best of my ability imposed upon me the duty of preserving by every indispensable means the government, the nation of which that Constitution was the organic law. Were it possible to lose a nation and yet preserve the Constitution? By general law, life, a limb must be protected. Yet often limb must be amputated to save a life, but life is never wisely given to save a limb. I felt that measures otherwise unconstitutional might become lawful by becoming indispensable to the preservation of the Constitution through the preservation of the nation. Its 4 sentences raise the great question of the adequacy of following the letter of the law to achieving, under extreme circumstances, the good of the nation. Lincoln claimed to discover within the text of the Constitution, specifically in the oath, the answer to this most agonizing of dilemmas.